The day we've been waiting for is finally upon us, because if you've been waiting for new iPads to release in October, we now hear from multiple sources that we should see them launch as soon as the 17th? Let's quickly delve into this. So the possibility of new iPads launching soon was first mentioned by Weibo source Setsuna Digital. They're pretty new to the leak scene, so of course take this with a grain of salt. But translating what they said on Weibo, by the end of this month, we should see an iPad mini 7 with the A16 chipset, a new iPad 11 with the USB-C pencil, and the iPad Air 6 with M2. Now, just to save his credibility, he did say he was uncertain if all three iPads were launching together, and that he was most confident about the Mini 7 releasing soon, but the others not so much. And by the way, would like to remind you guys, like this video and subscribe for more content like this, it would be appreciated. Thankfully, Supercharged then swoops in and says they've heard from a source that we could see new iPads announced later this week, and there should be updates to the iPad mini, and the iPad Air. So seemingly they believe we're getting 3 new iPads via press release, and I ultimately wouldn't be surprised by that, because these are going to be your typical spec updates, which means they're gonna be hella boring. I've already talked in depth about each of these iPads in separate videos, but let's summarize the changes. So beginning with the iPad mini, there's been 3 specific changes we've heard about, which is A16, changes to the front-facing camera, and a fix to the jelly scrolling issue. Now the jump from A15 in the current mini to the A16 is incredibly minor, guys. So I was praying we could see the mini introduce a new base level A17 chipset that has fewer CPU and GPU cores, but it would still get USB 3 speeds, and more importantly, ray tracing. But no, we're not getting that, we're getting the boring A16 instead. Yay! I guess the second change is slightly more exciting, because according to Setsuna Digital, they do mention the Mini 7 screen assembly would be rotated to reduce the effect of jelly scrolling. Now I'll be honest guys, when I had the Mini 6 for review, I did not pick up on this. I know it's a fair complaint and was a massive controversy at launch, but I just couldn't tell much of a difference between this and any other Apple LCD on the market. So I really can't get excited about this, but I guess I'm happy for those who were put off by the mini in the past because of this. Now the final change we've heard about is something to do with the front-facing camera, and I have no idea what they're doing, because while it's possible the mini could join the base iPad and switch to a landscape camera, that ultimately seems unlikely considering the mini supports Apple Pencil 2, and that of course has a charging strip in the same position as the landscape camera on the iPad 10. So I have no clue what these changes are gonna be with the Mini 7. It could be something incredibly minor like this gaining some of the software features from newer iPhones like cinematic modes. I think you also still can't do portraits with the front-facing camera on iPads, so we could see that. We could also possibly get the photonic engine to get crispier shots, but who cares? I only use a front-facing camera for calls, and the Mini 6 already has center stage, so there's not very much they can change here in my opinion. You'll probably also get new Wi-Fi and Bluetooth specs, but overall this Mini 7's gonna be your typical spec update. It should thankfully start the same price, and could come in some snazzy new colors, but as I've been saying for a while, the only reason I'm looking forward to this refresh is that it should help the Mini 6 get cheaper, which is awesome news for cheapskates like myself. If the Mini 6 is now sub $350, that would be an awesome deal. Moving to the base iPad, we actually haven't heard a whole lot about this, but it doesn't take a genius to work out what kind of upgrades we could get. This, much like the Mini, is going to be a spec refresh, and if you think about it, apart from the iPad 10 that gave us a new design, every other base iPad has just been spec bumps, and so the iPad 11's gonna be exactly that. Expect the A15 in this, which is a minor upgrade over the A14 in the iPad 10, but the main reason Apple's giving us this is because they no longer produce other A14 products. The iPhone 12 has been killed off, and so instead of continuing to produce A14 for this one single iPad, it makes a lot more logistical sense to share the same chipset the iPhone 13, 14, Apple TV, and the SE has, which is the A15. What I'm more excited about, however, is something we've already seen hints at, which is a USB-C Apple Pencil. There has been code in iPadOS 17.1 about this, and considering the EU's forcing Apple to change everything to USB Type-C, it makes sense the switching Apple Pencil 1 from Lightning to the Type-C port. Now the great thing about this is that of course, since the iPad 10 currently has a Type-C port, the 11 should also have one, and so now you should be able to directly plug the pencil into the iPad, which is way better than this abomination of a charging method. Please kill this stupid dongle. But yes, the most exciting change about this iPad is nothing to do with the actual iPad. Now this is just a mere prediction, but I could also see the base iPads getting slightly cheaper. In the past, when base level products get a redesign and they come with a price increase, the price then gradually comes back down as the new design, of course, becomes cheaper to build. This happened with the MacBook Air several times in the past, and so I expect the same thing to happen with the base iPads. Now, does this mean the iPad 11 is going to start at $329? No, that's not going to happen. I think it's going to be more of a gradual change. So the iPad 11, for example, starts at $379, and then the iPad 12 drops back down to $329. Either way, guys, I'm pretty confident the base iPad's going to get cheap, and this should hopefully mean there's no longer going to be two base iPads in the range. That was a complete mess of a decision last year, so I'm hoping we go back to one base iPad that's actually affordable. Finally, we come to the iPad Air 6, and we also haven't heard much about this apart from one change, which is M2. Now, this is probably the iPad I'm least excited about because it's not like M1 was being fully utilized on iPadOS in the first place, so chucking M2 in this is pretty pointless. Like the iPad mini, the only reason I want this to release is because it's going to make the M1 iPad Air cheaper, which of course is going to become a steal on the used and refurbished market if you can find it for sub $450. And if you're wondering about the price of the iPad Air 6, it should stay at $600 considering there's not that many changes. Now I know there's been talk of a larger size option, but I don't see that releasing right now. Also, Apple Pencil Hover I feel is going to remain exclusive to the iPad Pro because Apple wants to create more differentiation in the range. But we could see new Bluetooth and Wi-Fi specs, new colors would also be nice, and while we haven't heard anything about this, I think it's time at least the iPad Air gets 128 gigs of base storage, because how is Apple expecting consumers to push M2 and use it for Final Cut when it only has 64 gigs of base storage? So that's everything, guys, and there is actually one more piece of evidence. We could see new iPads released soon because we've also heard from sources that iOS and iPadOS 17.1 could launch on the 24th of October, which is exactly a week after the 17th of October. So what I'm predicting is going to happen is that the iPads get announced on October 17. They're available to order immediately, but only ship on the 24th with iPadOS 17.1 pre-installed. That's probably why we heard about the USB-C pencil in iPadOS 17.1 code, because behind the scenes, Apple has been preparing to ship new iPads with this new software, and this possibility has been supported by a leaker as well. And just as I wrap up this video, there's now two more reports. Number one, Mark Gurman says there's no new iPads coming anytime soon, which is very surprising news. Let's see who ends up being right. And number two, Makoto Kara says, no, there's no new iPads, but there's gonna be an Apple Pencil 3 with magnetic tips. And guys, I don't see this happening. For one, Makoto Kara is not a very credible source, but also it's much more likely they update the Pencil with, of course, the iPad Pros. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching.